Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Three things. I'm staff writer Chelsea Sipple. This is staff publisher Andrew Jones. We're here at the Dean Smith Center after Carolina's loss to Alabama. Alabama 94, Carolina 79. We've got three things to talk about. We'll talk about what this means at the end. But AJ, we're going to start out with defense. Carolina gave up 90 points today. We saw that happen again to Kansas. And in the past games, they've been letting their opponents shoot over 50%. With Bama, they shot 52.9% in the second half, had 51 points. Looking back at Dayton, they scored 51 points in the second half and shot 51.4%. I mean, this defense isn't there, and they're giving up points.
Yeah, let's see. So Kansas 92, and then the last week, Dayton 90, Michigan State was 90-something, 94. Tonight, 94 again. Dayton 51 at the half, 51.4%. I think Auburn was 40 or 45 points in their halves. This club's just terrible defensively. That's what we're getting at. And they were bad tonight. There's so many. I mean, we could sit here for an hour and dissect all the things that are wrong with this team right now. But to me, I'm not going to say it's the biggest concern because they all are intertwined. Monday, we talked to Hubert Davis. We had a press conference Monday in advance of tonight's game. And he has openly talked before about how he's not a big stats guy, not a big analytics guy, but I wanted to know to what degree. So he has said in the past, look, I use stats and analytics sometimes to validate something to the team. But they were so bad in Maui in so many areas, I wanted to know how far he went into the stats and analytics to validate things to the team based on their performance in Maui. So I asked him that on Monday, and he went to several things. To his credit, he was very open about it. First thing he went to was defense.
Yeah.
And basically he said they've got to guard the ball better, man-to-man on the perimeter. They've got to affect another team running its offense. They've got to guard the post better. They've got to rotate better defensively. They've got to close out better on three-point shooters. You get where I'm going here? I'm listening to you, everything that you're supposed to do defensively.
Yeah.
And it was a point of emphasis. He said it was a point of emphasis. They were going to get it right. They were awful at all those things tonight. They were bad defensively. They were really good the first four possessions Alabama had. And this goes to intensity and focus and want and grit and Byron and all those things, because we talked to four players afterward. All four of them agreed the team's not tough enough. They don't play hard enough. They don't buy in enough defensively. And that's what we saw tonight. So they're all saying it. Seth Trimble said in Hawaii, they got to buy in better defensively. They're saying all this stuff. And I asked Van Allen Lubin, who's in his third year in college, I said, what's the trigger point? Like, how do you fix this? And he went on to talk about someone's got to speak up. But that's the problem with this team. And Hubert alluded to the quietness, how quiet this team is, how much they don't communicate affects them on the defensive end more than in any other way. And we saw that tonight. There was one question about the confusion on defense. Like, they look totally confused about who's going to go out on the shooter, who's not. They don't handle ball screens well, and they look confused. And Hubert said that's partly a byproduct of the lack of communication. So it's a hodgepodge of what not to do defensively, and they have been doing that on a regular basis since they got to Maui. They have been atrocious defensively since they got to Maui, and they weren't great at times before that. But at least like at Kansas, you saw what they could do defensively in a long stretch in the second half, but that hasn't carried. The team that played the second half against Kansas is still in Lawrence. So I asked Hubert tonight about the defense, and I alluded to what he said on Monday. And he said it was a great question. When I said, not that my question was great, it's more a great question that how do you fix this? How do you get it right? What are the problems? And he said it's a great question because there's myriad problems.
Yeah.
Every box that must be checked defensively is not being checked. And we have watched this tonight. We watched this team regress, in my opinion, from where they were in Maui. They regressed. They lost by 15 points at home to a good team, but a team that already had two losses, a team that was playing without, I think, his third leading scorer, a starter. And they came in here and they owned the joint. Carolina led for 2 minutes and 1 second tonight.
Yeah, and AJ, we'll talk about this when we start talking about our offense and the next thing. What kicks them when they're down is Carolina goes in these scoring droughts, and then Alabama has 5 consecutive, just bumping up that lead.
Yeah, twice they hit five. What you're talking about, which is a good point, Chelsea. Twice Alabama hit 5 straight shots.
Mm-hmm.
3 times they hit 4 straight shots. And Carolina's driving into the lane, and guards are crashing to the floor. The ball doesn't get anywhere near the rim. They're missing threes. They missed 16 straight threes tonight. We're going to talk offense in a second, but there's nothing complimentary. Like the defense isn't picking up the offense when they're struggling, and the offense, when it scores well, they're still not defending. So defensively, I don't know how many shots were highly contested tonight by Alabama.
Yeah.
Even the stuff in the lane. There was one time when Jalen Washington committed a foul, and he went up against a guard when he probably should have just said, hey, 6'11 guys, 6'10 guys can draw charges too. You don't have to go up and try to block everything. And he ended up committing the foul, and the free throws were hit. And it was part of the bad defense. And I'm not going to single out Jalen, but Jalen is struggling. If it wasn't for Cade Tyson, Jalen would be struggling a lot more than anybody based on what we anticipated we would see this year. He played 12 minutes tonight. Yeah. He wasn't defending, so he checked out. He played twice in the first half, total of 4 minutes, 2 minutes each stint. After he checked out the second time, Ty Claude checked in twice. I mean, Hubert's gone down to Ty Claude, but you know what he did? He at least provided them a little bit of bravado out there, a little bit of effort and energy. And Jay Wash didn't have it again. I mean, his first halves, he's just been MIA, and it's a massive problem. And Hubert's going to have to make some very difficult decisions because they are 8 games in. They're 4-4. And against good teams this year, they played 5. They're 1-4 in those games, and they have been awful defensively in all 4. And they've been good in stretches offensively, and they've been a little bit better on the boards than people probably realize, which is sort of an interesting thing because when we talk about the offense thing, I'm going to hit on something I think is one of the really big problems with this team. But they're terrible defensively, so they give themselves very little chance to win against a good team when they go into a game awful. The first 4 possessions for Alabama tonight, they forced an awkward shot by Nelson, a shot right before the shot clock went off, a shot clock violation, a turnover, and then a rush 3 from the corner hit side of the backboard. After that, Alabama was damn near spotless offensively, and that's because Carolina was pretty awful.
Yeah, they dropped off. We'll start harping on the offense, and we'll start by saying Alabama's largest lead was 18, and Carolina seems to have a pattern where once they're down at the half, they're not coming back. And the offense today just looked discombobulated, between the guards.
Yeah, that was the impression tonight. And I asked RJ about that because they did battle back. I mean, at Kansas against Dayton, they won that game. They battled back before, but you can only fall behind so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, like I even wrote in when they were in Maui about how many halftime speeches does Hubert have in him? And he's used them all up in November.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're not going to come back. And I asked RJ tonight, I said, when teams are building those margins, I said, did you sense across the board that I didn't use the word helplessness, but I intimated it, helplessness. And he said, yes, for sure, 100%. He can see where a 6-point push turns into a 10 to 12-point push. And it's like they have no ability to stop it.
Yeah.
Their effort on offense to stop it is a guard driving into 16 people and throwing the ball toward the basket if they're lucky to get it up in the air, and they crash to the ground, and sometimes a foul's called, other times transition for the other team. I mean, that's kind of what they do in those situations. Mm-hmm. They almost, it looks like they're out of control offensively and almost panic. So the runs that they allow, runs always start with defense, and they always end with defense. But runs also are contributed by offense. And Carolina offensively, I don't care what the number of points are. The efficiency has not been great. The look has not been great. The connectivity has been awful. Going back to Hawaii, they had more turnovers than assists in Hawaii. They did again tonight. Elliot Cadeau has 16 turnovers in his last 4 games. He doesn't look like the same player that went to Hawaii before they went to Hawaii. He doesn't look at all like the same player. And it's not just him. Seth Trimble has been a little bit of a different player the last couple of games. RJ is struggling mightily, and you could see it. You can almost see when he shoots a 3 sometimes he's trying to make a 4-pointer instead of a 3-pointer just because the struggles are piling up now with him. And they're not getting much out of the bigs. They can get a big roll into the basket, but honestly, and I asked Van Allen Lubin this tonight, I asked him, I said, where is the comfort, the relationship between the guards constantly just someone from the wing, from the perimeter, just driving into traffic, And the communication with the sense with the big man, knowing when to drag his guy away and when to become an open receiver for the ball in case the guard kicks it, because all their bigs could shoot 8-footers, 10-footers. And those are there, but we haven't seen any of that. We haven't seen kickouts to the perimeter when they drive. Once they drive, it's like they're going in there and they're trying to draw a foul instead of trying to score.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And Hubert said tonight, which was a great point, that he's told them, when you go to the rim, go to the rim. Don't do this. When you start moving the ball around like this, you're not going to get the foul call. The play's going to play on. And it happened so often tonight. It happened a lot in Maui. And because of that, they're leaving points on the floor. They get into the lane and they leave points on the floor, just like a team gets, inside the 30, their opponent's 30 in football, and they don't even get a field goal out of it. They're wasting opportunities when they get near the basket to make something happen. I can count on one hand the number of made threes that they've gotten on kickouts in the last 4 games because guys driving lane. Once they go in there, it's rhino horns, man. You're plowing forward and seeing whatever happens. That's terrible offense. That's not what this team played like at Memphis. That's not what this team played like in the second half at Kansas. That's not what this team played like against American. It's not what this team should be, but they have very quickly morphed into that. And
absolutely.
And it's an overall discomfort of what they are as a team right now. And they're not shooting the three. I don't know what they were, 3 for 24 tonight. They missed 16 straight threes tonight. Most of the threes they get are swings or a pass, a guy dribbles and shoots a three. The kick out, if you go watch a player shoot, and you've been here well before games start, and we come in here sometimes and guys are shooting, they're going around the perimeter, and there's a student manager under the basket that rebounds and passes it to them. It's a kick out pass. They catch, square, and shoot. It's easiest perimeter shot you can shoot. Easier than the swing pass, easier than the handoff, easier than the flip, easier than coming off a ball screen, easier than dribbling and stepping back. It's the easiest three you're going to get. And these teams are not. This team is not taking advantage of the opportunity that if you're going to drive, do more than just be committed to one thing, crashing to the ground. Kick the ball out. They're not doing that right now. So there's a lot wrong offensively. There's a lot wrong defensively, and that's how they're 4-4, and they've lost 3 games in a row, and they've been down by margins just in the last 4 games. 21 to Dayton, 18 to Auburn, 14 in the first half to Michigan State, and they were down 18 tonight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, AJ. And I mean, as you mentioned, that 16 missed threes, and not to pick on RJ here, but he was 1 for 11 in his game, 0 for 6 in the second half.
He was 0 for 9 against Alabama and Los Angeles, so he's 1 for 20 in the last 2 games against Alabama. But RJ's rushing, he's pressing a lot of those threes at this point.
Yeah.
He's frustrated. You were there. You were right next to him after the game. He's frustrated.
Yeah.
He's trying his best to answer the questions, but you can just see the frustration coming out of his pores. And of all the people on this team whose frustration might be at its highest would be him for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. They've got some problems right now. They got a lot of problems right now. Some of these things are very, very fixable. Some of them are not, but if you fix what's fixable, the stuff that's not won't be as glaring.
Yeah. Well, AJ, we talked about both sides of the floor, obviously not doing great on either end. What does this mean moving forward for Carolina with this pattern we've seen, now being 4-4 in the season?
In the last 10 days, they're not a good basketball team. I'm stunned because I thought they were going to be a lot better. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about the big man situation in the offseason and then leading up to the start of the season, and the program was pretty adamant that they thought Jay Wash was fine. They would be okay. And I did a lot of research on past national champions. Half the 10 last national champions basically were smaller than Carolina. But that was with Cade Tyson as a starter. He's basically non-existent now. That was with Jay Wash at 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan out there. He had 12 minutes tonight. Yeah. He didn't play the last 16 minutes of the Michigan State game, except maybe like 1 second at the end of regulation or something. He didn't play the last 8 minutes of the Auburn game. He was benched to start the second half against Dayton. So he's not the guy that they thought he was going to be and that they need him to be. Tyson's not the guy that they thought he was going to be and that they need him to be. So you take those 2 components out, suddenly there's not a lot there, and you realize that your 5 best players are guards. And Ian Jackson, for his 23 points tonight, and he continues to show a lot of that's in his bag offensively, but he struggles mightily defensively. It's not going to crash the boards. Drake Powell can do a lot of stuff for you, but Drake started at the 4 tonight. I asked him right over here on October 7th on Media Day, because I was anticipating the possibility he might play some 4 when you look at the way the lineups might be. I said, can you play 4 at this level? He paused and said, well, yeah, I think so, sure. Because he said he played 4 in high school. Obviously, that was different because that's public school right nearby. He could be a 4 in high school, and he's fine doing that. But here, he's 6'6", 100, and I don't know what they list him at. They list him at 180. They're overdoing it. He's small. He's a small 6'6", and he's their 4. Hubert was trying something, and they have some issues. They have issues, obviously, with the bigs, but I believe they out-rebounded Alabama tonight. I believe that
40.
Yeah, and Alabama's a good rebounding team. They were plus 7.3 coming in. Alabama's previous 5 games were against power conference teams. 4 were against Big Ten teams, and the only one to out-rebound them was Illinois. They out-rebounded Purdue and West Lafayette. They out-rebounded Rutgers. They out-rebounded Oregon. They've been a pretty good rebounding team. They got a lot of length. So the Tar Heels actually did well on the glass tonight.
Surprising.
But defensively, they don't protect the rim. Defensively, they don't rotate. Offensively, they're getting zilch out of a half-court offense with any bigs. And the guards aren't even looking at him at this point. So Hubert's got a lot of stuff he's got to fix. And I think right now this is what we see is what they are. I thought they would be a lot better. I still think they have a chance to get better and become a pretty good team. The opportunities to get really good wins on the resume are shrinking fast because the ACC is a disgrace. It is an utter disgrace. There can be very few opportunities to help your resume in the league. The league is worse than I've ever seen it, certainly since I've been covering it, much worse than it's been. And they've got UCLA and Florida coming up, and I don't know how good UCLA is. That's it. I mean, they're going to have to win those games. They have to win those games to help their resume. Otherwise, they're going to try to get into the NCAA tournament by winning games in the ACC, and they need Dayton to have a great year, and I think Dayton's good. So that could help them as well. But right now, this is not a good team. Right now, this looks like a dysfunctional team. It looks like a team in disarray. It looks like a team that has no connection on the floor at all. They're not communicating. They don't look like they're playing off each other well at all. Offensively, a couple of years ago, I wrote pieces about how RJ and Leaky Black said that all they do is call set plays, and the opponents know the set plays. Now they don't call any. They call these actions, and I'm not even sure they get into the actions sometimes. So they're a mess.
Yeah.
Chelsea, they're a mess. They're not very good. Georgia Tech comes in here Saturday, and Georgia Tech missed 2 starters last night. At least played with Oklahoma, is a pretty good team. Played with them on the roads. Georgia Tech come in here and win this game. Right now, this team has a 2019-20 vibe to it, which shocks me.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I thought this team had a chance to be really, really good. And right now, I think people that follow North Carolina would just settle for good. Because they're not good right now.
Well, you said it best, AJ. I mean, there's no hiding it. This team is a mess right now. It's dysfunctional. You see it on both ends of the court. So
yeah, and they're not happy, and they know it, and they're saying the same things now. Got to buy in, got to give better effort, got to communicate. They're saying these things, but there's no trigger point to actually make it happen. There's no fuse.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a fuse on the roster. There might not be.
I don't know.
One of the things that we talked about last spring when Harrison Ingram went to the NBA is, what is this team going to find that voice, the Harrison Ingram voice and the Cormac Ryan voice? The guys that have no problem going up to a teammate and saying, what the F are you doing? It's your A in gear, right?
Yeah.
I look on the floor and I don't see that. There's a bad play, turnover. I see body language, heads down, going up the court during dead balls. And Hubert sees it too. The assistant coaches see it. The kids see it on film. So there has to be a fuse. I don't know what that fuse is. RJ said today it needs to be him, but RJ was saying some stuff in the little huddle on the court here. And maybe this just isn't a group that responds well to something like that. I don't know. We're finding out what they're about. And 8 games into the season, they leave a lot to be desired in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Well, they've got 2 days of practice. If that changes anything around, we'll be back Saturday for Georgia Tech.
Yep.
But yeah, that wraps it up. We'll be back Saturday to the viewers. Stay tuned for Carolina basketball. TarHeelIllustrated.com has got all the content on YouTube and the website. Like, subscribe if you want to keep up with it. The wins and the losses, we got it all.
Got it all. Coaching search stuff too, guys.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back.
Thanks.